He's written about his life in his new book, The Most Famous Musician You've Never Heard of. Please welcome Andy Cahan.
The history with Little Richard and Chuck Berry. I was the music director in 1974 for the Grammys. I worked with Little Richard for about a year and a half, and we went to Australia and we did a whole United States Let the Good Times Roll, Richard Nader, and we did a whole tour like that. And so here I was at the Grammy being the music director for Little Richard and Chuck Berry, and the rehearsal was just me on an upright piano in this little back room, and Little Richard was there, and Chuck had his guitar, and we went over all their hit records. And the whole purpose of the giving away the awards was, instead of Tutti Frutti Ah Rudy, it was Al Green, He's Clean, stuff like that. So they changed all the lyrics to all the songs to do the performance. But during the performance, Little Richard's mic went out, so there was no sound. And then later on, Chuck Berry's mic went out, so there was no sound. So this is all live. And then, of course, I had to give the band cues, for the intros and outros. And so the grand piano is right in the center stage, and the drummer was behind me up in the back there. The guitar player was over there. Everybody was scattered all over the stage, so there was no eye contact. So we had to wing it. But just working with Little Richard and Chuck Berry, these guys are the idols of Paul McCartney and John Lennon. So it was full circle, because the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, they were the reason that I became a musician. I was making monster movies like Frankenstein and Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman and all these monster movies. And then the Beatles came out on Ed Sullivan, and I said to myself, I want to be a Beatle. I'm not going to pick up any girls making monster movies. So that's how that came together. But that was a huge highlight. Just to work with Little Richard and Chuck Berry is just amazing.
So how did you first meet with Little Richard?
A phone call the night before. The drummer from the Turtles, Craig Cramph, he called me up and he said, Bumps Blackwell just called him. Now, Bumps Blackwell was the co-writer of Tutti Frutti and Good Golly Miss Molly and a lot of Little Richard's hits. And he was like Little Richard's manager. So he called up Craig and he says, we need an organ player. So the night before, Craig calls me and he says, we're going to LAX tomorrow and we're doing a concert tour with Little Richard. And no rehearsal. I mean, you have to know all these hit records, which is pretty easy, 3-chord stuff. And so no rehearsal. We played in Hershey, Pennsylvania at this huge stadium, like 50,000 people or whatever. And no rehearsal. We got up on stage, and Little Richard comes out, and he just ripped it up. It was like the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life. He was like all over the place. He started out on the grand piano, then he got off the piano and he jumped around. He jumped on top of the piano, and then he jumped around, and then jumped on top of the organ. I'm sitting here playing the organ, looking up at him as he's dripping sweat all over me, It was really exciting. So we did a whole concert tour, and then we went to Australia, and it was really totally amazing, really fun.
So that's the first night. Like, over time, would he ever rehearse with you guys, or was like no need to
No rehearse.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a rock musician and you don't know Tutti Frutti and Good Golly Miss Molly and Rip It Up and Send Me Some Lovin' and all of his hits, and they're all 3-chord stuff, so it's pretty easy. And it's all the same kind of pounding.
But I'm just thinking like a James Brown, who was, serious rehearsals.
Oh, I'm sure.
Chuck Berry, same thing you're talking about.
Oh, Chuck Berry, it was really funny with Chuck. At the little rehearsal, I say, what key is his song in? He says, I don't know. It's like this. It's over here. Okay. All right. What key is that? Oh, B flat. Okay, sure. So like he didn't even know what key he was in. It just looked like that on his guitar. So that was really funny.
And how about the relationship between those two, Little Richard and Chuck Berry? Were they friendly? Were they not friendly?
Little Richard would always put him down. You know, he would claim that he was the king of rock and roll. You know, but they're two different animals. I mean, their styles are so completely different, but they're both amazing, and they got along. They've done a lot of shows together, but it was really funny. But the bummer was when the mics went out. You know, so that was kind of a bummer.
Terrible, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.